So do you remember how we met?
But we met at a junior high school. I was going to something for my son, and you were there for your nephew. And I just remember having a conversation. You and I were just talking on some downtime, ended up linking up, exchanging phone numbers, and then keeping in touch. It's such a small world, but I'm so glad we got to meet.
You shared with me when we met, because we just kind of caught on like a house on fire. You shared with me about your journey through getting diagnosed with breast cancer. So can we talk about how old you were and what that journey was?
Absolutely. I want to start by saying that when I was 26 years old, I made a doctor's appointment, my yearly checkup, and there was a lump in my left breast. And the doctor, not a big deal, not a big deal, went on. Next year I was 27, went to the doctors. The lump was there. It had gotten a little bigger. But the doctors were like, how old are you again? 27? Not a big deal. We'll see you next year. And when I turned 28, I relocated, found a new doctor. And when I went to her, she felt the lump and said, okay, I'm sorry, what is this? And I'm like, not a big deal, saw previous doctors. And she flat out told me, I will not become your doctor unless you get that checked. I can't in good conscience take you on and just let that go. Did a biopsy, 28 years old, diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. Can I tell you, flipped my whole world upside down? Flipped my whole world upside down, Dawn.
And then from that moment, what was your journey?
Well, the journey started with chemotherapy, because it had started to spread. It was not only in my left breast, but it was spreading to my lymph nodes. So they had to do chemotherapy. So I had to have 8 rounds of chemotherapy. Every 2 weeks, I got another dose. Tough. I can't even, sometimes it's tough to still talk about what that process was like. But it was a very, very, very tough process. You're talking lack of sleep. The stuff you see in the movies where you lose where you lose your hair and you lose sleep and you can't quite figure life out, especially being 28 years old. I was newly divorced, 2 children. So my life was really upside down. So going through that process, and then from there I had multiple surgeries. Because it had shrunk enough where they were comfortable to do a lumpectomy. They thought I was too young to take the whole breast. So they did a lumpectomy on my left side, and then I did 45 days of radiation. And then, Dawn, guess what? The journey began. You know, people think the chemotherapy, like once all that's done, the journey is over. The journey is still going, but the journey began once they said, we think that we've removed all of the cancer. Yeah.
That's good news. And so during that time, who were your support system? What was your support system?
Oh my gosh, I drove my family and my friends nuts. I'm sure I did. I drove them nuts. But I had friends. I had a friend that practically moved in and helped with the kids. But my friends and family were amazing because they looked up recipes. To help with my diet, to try to boost my immune system. They actually looked up what was to be expected each stage of what I was going through. So I used to love having my Coke and my Tim Hortons Timbits. I burst out crying and I called my cousin and I'm like, I can't taste my donuts. And she stopped me and she said, Sadie, we talked about this. We knew that this was going to happen. So I had people that were like that cared that much to study what I was going to be going through, or the midnight calls, or the, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's wonderful.
The calls.
I'm glad that you had that.
Yeah, that I made to them, or the moments where I would look in the mirror and say, oh my gosh, I have no hair, where I could call them and say, you know what, this is rough. And they would say, okay, I'll be there in 30 minutes. So I had those people to get me through.
And Sadie, is that your nickname?
Yes, that's my nickname. Yeah. They have a few more, but Sadie is the one I can tell you.
Through your journey, once you were in remission, you decided to set out to help other women, specifically young women.
Yeah, it's called For Our Daughters Incorporated. And it literally came from when I was speaking with the doctor. He was asking me about my family history to kind of figure out what my regimen should be, anything like that. And Dawn, I couldn't answer a single question, didn't know. And so for me, it was a very embarrassing moment. At that moment, I said, you know what, if I don't know, how many other young ladies don't know? And growing up in my family, we did not trust doctors. The medical profession was just a no-no. Nobody went to the doctor unless something was really, really, really wrong. So I went back to the high school that I went to. I went to a couple of them, so I went back to both of them. And I asked the school, can I just go in and talk to the young ladies and encourage them to go home and learn their family history? That was the goal. And they said, sure. So I went into the phys ed classes and told my story. That's all I wanted to do was tell my story. He said, go home and learn and talk to mom, talk to grandma, or whoever you live with. Talk to the trusted guardian and learn about yourself. And the young lady started to speak up, and they said, well, Miss Mercedes, there's reasons why we're not comfortable speaking up. And so we took that information, developed a board of directors, put into play what became For Our Daughters Incorporated. And we put programs together based on the feedback we were getting from the girls. These young ladies, a lot of these young ladies hadn't even participated in phys ed because they were afraid of the other young ladies looking at them. So it was a self-esteem thing too. So we encouraged that. And there were so many times the phys ed teachers would come up and say, that young lady has not participated in phys ed all year. And you got her on the dance floor and she's laughing, and they get to be kids. So if I go and I speak to mom and we have a good conversation, and then mom says, you know what, let's do this again. So then it sparks a second conversation. And then the third, and the goal is to make it a habit, because guess what? If I were, when I was 26, had walked into the doctor's office and they felt that lump and pushed it aside, had I had the confidence, I would have spoken up and said, actually, it makes me uncomfortable, and I would appreciate it if we can look into it a little more. But because I didn't have that, my journey was different. So the goal is to prevent young ladies from having to go through what I went through just because they don't know.
I just salute you for the wonderful work you're doing and how your own struggle created an opening for all these girls.
So when I was going through breast cancer right before that happened, I was newly divorced, and I am now remarried, and that was a process in itself too, you know, just kind of like the insecurities after it all. He's amazing. Now get this, when I went through breast cancer, they told me that I may never have kids again due to the chemotherapy. We now have fraternal twins. So I often tell my doctor how they got it wrong, way wrong. How we can come together and create unity, finding common ground, even with someone you disagree with, because let's be real, this last year, a lot of families have been broken based on who you support, who you believe in, who you don't, what you believe in, what you don't. There were some separations that happened in my life too, after this past political season, let's just be honest. When you think about George Floyd, like all of the stuff that surrounded that, and my heart just hurt. So I had a friend of mine, a business owner friend, that when everything happened with George Floyd, she said, can we meet? I'm really confused. And she said, but I don't understand why when people say all lives matter, it's offensive to black people. Why is it offensive to you? And I said, let me explain it to you this way. You have a block, a community, and you have all these houses. And there's one house that's on fire. There's one house. Do you call the police and do you help your neighbor? Or do you say, but my house matters too? We're not talking about your house. Your house is okay. There's a house on fire. So do you look at the house on fire or do you worry about yours? And for a second, she stopped. And she's like, oh my God, I get it. And I said, so that's why it's offensive. And so when I explained it to her like that, she completely got it. And her motive after that point was, what can I do to help? So what steps can I take to help? Because I don't understand. I've never been a black woman. And for me, it's educating yourself, learning the other side. It does not mean that you are less than because you choose to set yourself aside for a moment and say, how can I help? And then I realized how much my peace mattered. The peace part for me, I would say when you find that part, and you realize that you won't let just anyone or anything come in and mess with that, for me, that's been the saving grace. And then I would even be remiss, my faith. And having that alone time with God, for me, is huge. When you get up in the morning, think on how you can help someone every morning. That helps.
So when we first met, you did not have the Mercedes Wilson show.
No, I did not have the Mercedes Wilson show when we first met. Doing some of the work with the nonprofit, as you know, we go to different television stations and we try to spread the word about our nonprofit. There was a local television station, WBBZ-TV, that always had us on a game show. It was so fun. So myself and the board or different volunteers would go on this game show. And one of the times I was there, someone from the studio says, "Mercedes, you're supposed to be in TV." And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just here to talk about the nonprofit. We're doing great. We're into the schools big time now. We reached over 1,600 young ladies in 2017, and we're planning for our next gala, which will be our 7th year, John. Well, when they launched a daily, 5-day-a-week television show called The Daily Buzz here in Buffalo, they called me and said, "Hey, we want you to be one of the panelists." Can I tell you, it was so fun. So that kind of sparked something in me that I did not know was there. So after that show, I went to radio and launched the Mercedes Wilson show. And from radio, I was there for maybe 4 or 5 months before I realized, okay, someone was onto something when they told me I was supposed to be in TV. So we launched the Mercedes Wilson show. 3 seasons down, gearing up for season 4 here in a few months. It's been a journey, Dawn. It's fun. I've learned a lot. I've got to meet some great people, talk about some great topics, kind of like what you're doing with your web series, meeting people and hearing their stories and inspiring somebody else, because that's what it's all about, giving back, right? So it's fun.
Sure.
It's fun. You want me to tell the secrets? I can't give you